Liverpool now hold the ball 57.9% of the time under Arne Slot. Compared to Klopp's more frantic high-velocity system, they've slashed goals conceded to around 0.9 per game while still scoring more per 90 minutes. That's not just improvement, it's measurable dominance. So, why don't rivals acknowledge it?
Liverpool have a good squad, but they're not quite up there with Arsenal and City, in my opinion. So I think, what he has in his locker, I don't expect him to lift up trees next season, but I think he'll compete.
Why does the media still talk about him as a Klopp 2.0 or Guardiola wannabe? In this breakdown, we'll use cold, undeniable numbers to prove what rivals won't say out loud. Slot didn't just beat the best, he borrowed their playbooks, and now they want his. When Arne Slot was announced at Liverpool, the first reaction from rival figures was to shrug it off.
Arne Slot will be sacked this season. Arne Slot will be sacked this season. It'll be like a Potter thing, where 10th, 11th, 12th. I see him finishing in the first 3 to 4 months as a top 10 team. It's not even top 4, it's not top 6.
Some dismissed him as simply Klopp 2.0, or even a lighter version of Guardiola. From their side of the microphones, it sounded convincing. They painted him as someone who hadn't proven himself in the Premier League and suggested Liverpool fans shouldn't expect anything original.
So my fear with Slot is that can he, one, get that team to play the way he wants to quickly, because results are important, and two, can he manage the Liverpool brand aura?
The size of it.
It's absolutely massive, and I think that also what money is he going to get as well?
Yet, when those same managers had to send their sides onto the pitch, the story began to shift in ways they won't raise in interviews. If the sound bites were to be believed, Slot was an easy man to read.
The problem Slot's going to have is the Eredivisie is not Premier League, and Feyenoord definitely isn't Liverpool. So he's wandering into a situation, and the media, I think the media is the big thing.
But why then did so many teams walk off the pitch against Liverpool looking frustrated, outplayed, and more importantly, without goals to show for their work? It is one of those contradictions that fans notice straight away. Managers speak in the press room with all the confidence in the world, but 90 minutes later, their teams are chasing shadows, forced to tear up the tactics they'd rehearsed all week. The best example came from Guardiola's Manchester City. Twice in the 24-2025 campaign, City had the ball, City had possession, yet they still found themselves leaving Anfield and the Etihad without scoring once. Liverpool not only beat them, they kept clean sheets against arguably the most creative squad in Europe.
It wasn't Man City. This was Liverpool against the team at the bottom of the table. That was so one-sided, it was scary. Now, the only problem is, as Craig said, the fact that it was 1-0, there was no way the second half was going to be the same. Also, they were going against the Klopp in the first half, so it's always going to be a little different. But they've gone about it in a completely different manner. They shut up shop, and at no stage did I think that Man City were going to score.
These weren't freak results, they were the evidence of Guardiola himself being pushed into a reactive mode, something rarely said about his teams. The cameras caught him gesturing furiously on the touchline, urging his players into new presses mid-match, knowing the system laid out in training was already falling apart. This wasn't unique to City though. Other managers were spotted switching shapes by the half-hour mark, abandoning their original setups to plug gaps Liverpool had opened. Imagine preparing all week only to realize by the first water break you'd got the plan all wrong. That sense of nervous adjustment, it's not the sign of managers who take Slot lightly, regardless of what they say under the bright lights afterward. Pundits tried to soften the narrative. On television, some were quick to say Slot's methods looked familiar, nothing new compared to Klopp or Guardiola before him. Yet, stats told another story entirely. Liverpool's defensive structure allowed fewer big chances, their pressing traps forced turnovers where previous managers had been vulnerable, and their expected goals against was among the lowest in the league. While commentary suggested imitation, the numbers highlighted something closer to transformation. Behind the scenes, the whispers began to spread. Staff members quietly admitted Liverpool were harder to prepare for than expected.
I had it once at Anfield, that the game was going there, and suddenly I could only see red shirts
flying around, the game is passing all over me, and I cannot react. And people will think, what is he doing? And I am like, I cannot do it. I cannot do it emotionally, physically, I cannot cope. Everything goes too fast. And I only had that feeling in my career once, and it was at Anfield.
Each fixture brought uncertainty. Would Slot push higher with aggressive lines, or would he sit in and force mistakes with disciplined patience? That unpredictability became a psychological block, one no rival wanted to admit publicly. They kept the posture of bravado because admitting otherwise would mean conceding that Liverpool's new boss had taken control of the script. So, while rivals smiled in front of the microphones, off camera there was a different mood growing. The gap between public dismissal and private respect suddenly became impossible to ignore. And it's that hidden respect, bred by weeks of anxious preparation, that is now reshaping how the top clubs approach their own tactical blueprints. Why do analysts call Arne Slot's plan the best of three worlds? It comes down to the way he's merged aspects of Guardiola's build-up, Klopp's intensity, and De Zerbi's control. Each piece on its own would be already hard to manage, but combining them, it's created a system that doesn't look or feel like a copy. It feels like Liverpool's new DNA. Klopp's Liverpool thrived on energy and on chaos. The constant high press and rapid transitions produced unforgettable nights, but it could also leave them exposed. Slot didn't scrap the identity entirely, he reshaped it. Instead of relying on non-stop pressure, Liverpool now line up with a hybrid 4-2-3-1 that can quickly resemble a 4-2-4 in attack.
Two exceptional players who can bring the balls to Mo, to Lucio, to Cody, to Darwin, to Jota, and therefore we've chosen to bring in two players that were maybe a bit more attacking-minded.
This foundation lets him tighten the structure while still keeping the aggressive mindset alive. The first thing opponents notice isn't reckless speed, it's the control. That control has forced rivals into a different challenge. They thought they would be facing frantic energy, yet what they get is a patient build-up, precise movements, and pressing that looks almost surgical. The team no longer presses just to create chaos, they press to funnel opponents into traps. Ball circulation in the back line has increased sharply, with more passes completed each game, and that rhythm slows opponents down. Slot's side takes fewer shots than before, but the ones they create are often from carefully worked openings.
If the fullbacks are all down the line and you play the fullback, then he's very far away from some other players, and it takes really long to get the ball over there. So if you are playing closer to each other, then the ball goes faster from one foot to another, and that gives less time to the opponent to defend.
The turning point has been the double pivot in midfield. Ryan Gravenberch and Alexis Mac Allister hold that area with a balance of skill and discipline. Gravenberch has become a standout under Slot, leading the league's midfielders for interceptions and ranking among the best for recoveries. His awareness in tight spaces, it helps Liverpool bypass an initial press and launch attacks with calm control. Next to him, Mac Allister acts as the anchor, covering ground, breaking up play, and keeping passes flowing at a steady rhythm. This pairing nullified many of the old counter-pressing strategies rivals had used against Klopp's teams. Slot has also elevated Dominik Szoboszlai. His powerful strike against Arsenal this season caught headlines, with fans comparing him to Steven Gerrard for the sheer quality of that set piece.
Szoboszlai's hit! Oh yes! It is something very, very special from Dominik Szoboszlai!
But more than highlight moments, Slot has refined him into a complete box-to-box midfielder. Szoboszlai now breaks lines, links play deeper, and carries the ball in transition without sacrificing defensive work. That change shows how Slot's system isn't just about theory, it's about unlocking players at the right time. Other squads tried to adapt, defenders tucked narrower, midfielders pushed wider, pressing shapes rotated between man orientations and zonal screens. Even with those adjustments, Liverpool's structure held firm. Every failed attempt highlighted an uncomfortable truth. Slot's tactical balance kept opponents reactive. This is why calling him a copycat isn't accurate. Slot took the strengths of modern giants and put them into a clear identity of his own. And with that identity established, he hasn't just shifted tactics, he's pushed rivals into major decisions well beyond matchday planning, including how they spend in the transfer market. Why did Liverpool's £125 million move for Alexander Isak shake the entire league? It wasn't just the size of the fee, although that did break records. It was what the deal represented. Supporters who had followed Fenway Sports Group's strategy for years understood it was not a gamble, but the final piece of a long-term plan. Since 2010, FSG had moved step by step, clearing debt, strengthening infrastructure, upgrading Anfield, and building facilities like the AXA training centre. The last phase, the one that started in 2025, was always going to be about players. The recruitment drive wasn't random, it was designed to turn Liverpool into a dynasty. Rivals tried to frame the signing spree as reckless. Some voices claim Liverpool were chasing the same route that put clubs like Chelsea into chaotic cycles of turnover, but underneath the criticism was unease that Liverpool's intent had outstripped theirs. This wasn't a one-off splash, it came with balance sheets already cleared, stadium revenue climbing, and commercial income at its highest point. Liverpool had created financial flexibility by selling Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez at peak value, which effectively paid for the new arrivals. In return, they gained younger players tied to long contracts, players who would form the backbone for years. Isak was the centerpiece, coming off a campaign where he scored 23 goals in 34 league games for Newcastle. He brought a level of precision Liverpool had lacked in their number 9 role since Roberto Firmino's peak. His non-penalty shot conversion rate of 26.4% highlighted how clinical he'd become. Slot wanted more than a finisher. He wanted a forward who disrupted defensive structures. Isak's movement dragged centre-backs out of shape, his hold-up play allowed wingers to attack space, and he could slide between a traditional striker and a second playmaker. That versatility opened patterns Liverpool had not been able to use consistently in recent years. The rebuild didn't stop with him. Florian Wirtz arrived to add a creator capable of dictating the final third. His ability to carry the ball and thread passes gave Liverpool another threat between the lines. Alongside him, Ugo Ekitike added depth, providing rotation without any loss of energy or mobility. Suddenly, preparing to face Liverpool looked entirely different. Teams had spent years narrowing the game onto Mohamed Salah. Now, defensive planning became a pick-your-poison puzzle. Focus too much on Salah and Isak would exploit the space, step out to cut supply into Isak and Wirtz would pull strings unmarked. Spurs and Arsenal both reacted by diving further into the market. Arsenal raised their wage bill to secure younger talents, while Spurs committed to higher fees in positions they might otherwise have left alone. It was a clear sign of pressure. They weren't just reacting to Liverpool's results, they were reacting to Liverpool's vision. That is the uncomfortable truth. This wasn't scattergun spending, it was a calculated structural shift that set up the club not only for the next season, but for the next era. And that shift left rivals doing more than scouting Liverpool's lineups. They were studying the mindset of Arne Slot's project itself. Rivals continue to downplay Arne Slot's impact, but their behaviour tells a different story. When managers change systems mid-match, when clubs spend heavily to keep pace, and when results swing in Liverpool's favour, the public dismissal no longer matches reality. Slot's first season produced a 71.4% win rate, the highest for any Liverpool manager in the Premier League, with 36 wins in his first 50 games. That's not a coincidence, that is control. So, the real question is this: are we watching the rise of Liverpool's next dynasty? Because, right now, the league isn't just facing Liverpool's players, it's facing Slot's ideas.